Okay, and then and go.
Started off as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and
I'm just trying to figure out what's in her mouth.
I just want to see him interview Francesco Aquilini.
Oh, he's a good human being, is what he would say about himself, I'm sure.
Who's hosting this thing?
Take charge, Kevin, would you? Jesus.
First time we ever met those guys. That was the major drunken pub argument.
I think you guys are the worst.
I'm going to have to probably watch some Canucks hockey, unfortunately.
Just making friends left, right, and center, and probably some enemies as well.
Tell him to shut up. He needs to hear that every once in a while.
Off to a good start.
All right. We are live.
It's okay to talk when it goes live.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey, facebook.com, the Hockey Podcast, youtube.com, the Hockey Podcast, where we continue to sit at the 100 and Claude Lemieux of subscribers. Claude Lemieux being one of the key cogs in the 1986 Stanley Cup run, a little bit before Devin's time. With the Patrick Waz, the late Tom Curvers, Chris Chelios was on that team, Guy Carbonneau, who some are comparing Philip Deneau to, Bob Gainey, etc., etc. Jacques Demers. No, it was not Jacques Demers. I'm trying to remember. I'll have to look up who the coach was before I get it wrong. But we are here to recap. Since the first time since 1993, the Montreal Canadiens have advanced to the Stanley Cup final, and they will face the winner of the New York Islanders Tampa Bay Lightning. We'll get to that a little bit later. How are you doing, Devin?
Doing all right. It's going to be a hot one here in Calgary for the next week and a bit in the foreseeable future, as you were talking about for Vancouver, very similar. Lower Mainland is going to be roasting, so hopefully we can cool off by watching some more hockey here and figure out tonight who's going to move on to play against the Montreal Canadiens.
Yes, it's going. This this entire playoff has been fascinating for so many things because we all came in. I picked the Colorado Avalanche, and now they're a distant memory. Everyone was then like, well, Vegas has got it. We'll get to them where they're at in a second here. But Devin, it is entirely possible that we will have two number 4 seeds in their division in the Stanley Cup final. And if Tampa wins, it's a number 3 seed versus a number 4 division seed.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about with Montreal just trickling into the playoffs, very much coasting. And at the beginning of it, that was the biggest question. Can they turn it on when they need to? And they definitely did when they were down 3-1 against Toronto. They climbed back. And if you really look at it, that's where it all started was game 5. 6, then 7. Crazy to think about the road that they've been on, then sweeping the Jets, and now a Game 7 OT winner. It really is crazy. I'm happy. I'm not so much happy for the Montreal Canadiens, but I'm happy for some of the players on that team, like Shea Weber, Carey Price. Who've gone through the ringer. You have Gallagher up there too in my head that really deserves to be there because those guys have gone through a lot in their career so far, and I want to give them I want to applaud them for their tenacity and where they've come from because it's a long road, especially for a guy like Shea Weber.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, especially Weber. I mean, he's just think about, we were kind of talking about this off air. Think about that 2016 trade that happened between Shea Weber and PK Subban. And now you look back on this, and ultimately, this is where this turns out to be. I think that this has to be turned. We can look at this and say that this was a win-win trade for everybody. PK Subban, that Nashville team. People forget they got to the finals, but they straggled in. They were basically an 8 seed. They were the second wild card. They swept the Chicago Blackhawks that year in the playoffs, and then they made their run all the way to the finals. And everyone looked at that and said, "Yeah, Subban for Weber." Subban is no longer with the Predators. He's with New Jersey. And now we don't know where he's going to be. But now Shea Weber's still playing with the Montreal Canadiens 5 years later in the Stanley Cup final, and it's sort of a similar situation. They kind of sort of stumbled their way into the playoffs, and now look where they are.
Yeah, it just proves that you need to play the games to figure out who's going to win. You can have all the statistics, you can have all the stats leaning towards a certain team, but the one thing that isn't within those numbers is the will and determination and the wow factor between it all. It's just I think that overall you have to give it to them. You have to. And even though I'm a diehard Leafs and Flames fan, and I don't want to see Montreal do it, part of me really, really does, just because of their character that they have on the team.
Yeah. Before I get to this, I just want to talk about some events that happened in 1993 that you may or may not have remembered.
I was 3 years old, Kev.
Okay.
well, actually, no, I was actually 2, technically.
Okay, fair. Okay, so you wouldn't know some of these things.
I wouldn't.
But the movie What's Eating Gilbert Grape?
Oh my God.
That was when Leonardo DiCaprio was starred with Johnny Depp. There was The Bronx Tale was a top movie, Rookie of the Year. Let's see. Jurassic Park started that year. The Fugitive was with Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones was out that year. Pelican Brief with Denzel Washington. Let's see what else. Other movies. That was the year Rudy came out.
Holy, that's crazy.
That was also the year that Bill Clinton won the presidential election in 1992, but his first year of the presidency was 1993. Jean Chrétien was the prime minister in 1993.
Wow.
And that's when, for those who care, the North American Free Trade Agreement started, was also in 1993.
I'm gonna quiz you. What was the number one hit in 1993 for music that hit the top of the charts?
There was, let's see, I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Yeah, that was also.
Number 2 was Whoop, There It Is by Tag Team.
Yep. That is amazing. Yeah. That is the last time the Montreal Canadiens were in the Stanley Cup final.
That's crazy.
Now, here is something that blew my mind a little bit that I heard last night. So during the shutdown happens in 2020, in March of 2020. We remember that the Calgary Flames were scheduled to have a home game against the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets came off, of course, a win over the Edmonton Oilers. And then coming in, the Canucks were on the road. They were in Arizona. They were, I think, heading from Arizona to Colorado. The Montreal Canadiens' next opponent was the Buffalo Sabres. Why is that significant, you ask? I'm glad you did. Because the winner of that game would have been the team that entered the bubble as the number 22 seed. They would have been the team that ended up playing the Pittsburgh Penguins.
24 seed, I believe.
Yeah, right. The 24 seed. Right. Sorry. Yeah. They would have been the number 24 seed. So that would have been the team that would have been playing the Pittsburgh Penguins in that play-in round. And you look back on that, you look where both teams are, you look where the Canadiens are, you look where the Buffalo Sabres are. But from the Canadians' perspective, that experience in the bubble, in that play-in tournament, playing Pittsburgh, taking on the Flyers, I think that helped them get this far. I think that was a huge aspect of what happened here.
Yeah, they massive. You think about what we've talked about on this podcast before, just how experience means a lot, and especially when it comes down to being the underdog, going in and taking out the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's spectacular that they did that, and talk about a jumping off point of it just seems like they've always been the underdog within the past few years, and they've been able to overcome it. And they've just talking about Buffalo. Look at where they are now. It is absolutely polar opposites. Buffalo and Montreal Canadiens. Buffalo is looking to trade pretty much anybody and everybody off of their roster. A Ristolainen, a Reinhardt, an Eichel. And to bring it back to Montreal, when they were down 3-1 against Toronto, it was full-blown panic. And okay, well, what's going to happen to this team? Those were the thoughts and those were the discussions that some people were having in that first round. So the fact that they are where they are now, and it could just easily have been Buffalo, just like that, right? It's crazy to think if Buffalo actually got into the bubble, where they would be now within the organization, because winning actually can bring your team together and can solidify some relationships that you're wanting to do everything that you can to the player next to you, and you know that he's going to do the same for you. So it is crazy.
Well, the biggest person on that hot seat from Montreal was certainly Marc Bergevin for sure, and he's been on the hot seat for a long time. But you look at what he did, is he took what they had, he took that team in the bubble and said, okay, this is what we need to move forward. Brought in made the Max Domi for Josh Anderson trade. He got Joel Edmondson. He went after Jake Allen, and everyone was scratching their head about the amount of money that they were spending on goaltenders. Yeah. Then he signs Corey Perry. Then he makes a trade for Eric Gustafsson and John Merrill in the before the trade deadline, and Eric Stahl. Yep. So he knew he saw what they had and built around it. And then of course, let's not forget, and this is actually let's look back on this. This is the 2, 3. This is at least the third straight year that a team that has replaced their coach has advanced to the Stanley Cup final. Dallas last year brought in Rick Bowness for I'm crapping on his name for a second here, but then you had Craig Berube for Mike Yeo with St. Louis. And then Pittsburgh also a couple during this run as well had to switch bring in Mike Sullivan. So I think within the last 5 years, we've had at least 4 coaching changes had happened in the Stanley Cup final. And not only that, let's even dig this even deeper with the Montreal Canadiens, because Dominic Ducharme is technically not going to be coaching the Stanley Cup final. That's going to be Luke Richardson.
Yeah. When did his quarantine start? Is he allowed to potentially even come back? Because I heard that it does start on Monday, right?
Yes, the final starts on Monday. So it
was earlier this week, was it not?
I'm thinking he is missing.
He might be back. He might be back for games 6 and 7, if it goes that far.
Yeah.
Potentially. So, and the coach you're thinking of is Jim Montgomery.
Right. Yeah, I knew it was a Jim. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about an audition. We talked about this before again. I always say that about the coach now. Now he's his name's eluding me. Not Ducharme, but who's in for Ducharme?
Luke Richardson.
Luke Richardson. This is a great showcase for Luke Richardson to potentially become a head coach at some point here. There's a couple times last night where I was curious on why they weren't making a bigger stink about a certain call like that icing in OT. I thought that they could have easily made a bigger deal about that, especially in OT. And but that as far as anything else, it just seems like he's cool, calm, collective, and it is definitely going to get some phone calls within the offseason, if not this year, next year, for a coaching job, a head coaching job. That is if he wants to branch out a little bit from the Montreal Canadiens. But yeah, Ducharme, he's I know that they're talking with him every day, trying to figure out, okay, well, what do you, and having a collective group discussion on how to deploy their troops and what the strategies are. But man, good on Luke Richardson.
Okay, so let's get to the one part here. We'll get to the icing here in a second. But the one thing I will say for Luke Richardson and the Montreal Canadiens that I also need to give him credit for in terms of is how they have handled the officiating and the crap officiating. Like, there's no other way to do it. Whether we look at it that this is the NHL mandating the refs that this is how they want it to be called, or the blatant misses that the refs have had, it's not been good officiating. Like, I think we can all agree on that part of it. But the fact of the matter is how they've handled the officiating. Chef's kiss. They have not been bitched they haven't bitched once. They've remained calm. They're not yelling at the referee. They're not nothing. They are just saying whatever. And last night could have been an unmitigated disaster for the National Hockey League, because if the Vegas Golden Knights won that game because of that face-off, oh boy.
It looks and smells and tastes like Vegas versus what was it? Vegas versus that blown call. San Jose. Thank you. Yes. And how detrimental that was for San Jose. So, Kev, it could have been terrible. And it sucks because if you look at the positioning, it's all about the positioning of the linesman there. He's on the other side of Lehner as he's making the icing call. Even though the ref is right on the proper side of where for a vantage point to see whether or not Lehner touches the puck for the icing or not. It just blows my mind that they aren't able to just be in the right fucking position. Being a linesman and being a referee, I've never done it, but obviously, to me, it's so blatantly obvious. Just be in the right position to make the call. Yeah, and I'm so sick and tired of talking about it. Oh my God, as I'm sure a lot of people are, because you just want them to make the right calls. And yes, you're going to screw up every once in a while, and that's okay. But this is more than every once in a while.
Well, again, this is another situation where what bothers me isn't the miss is partly the missed call, but there are four of you on the ice, and you're not getting together to discuss this.
Or even the ref going over and saying, "Hey, I saw this. It needs to be at center ice."
Like, even scientifically, it literally went like, even if you're on the wrong side. Like, it obviously hit something.
Well, it could have been the post, and if it hits a post, then that's a different story, right? Because that doesn't mitigate the icing. But if it hits the pad, that's where the difference is.
But so even there's a different sound. There's the pad sound, which is sort of a and a post sound, which is a bit more of a ding. Right?
I want that to be clipped, by the way. You making those noises. It's, I don't know. It's just, like I said, it just baffles me. It really does. And like you said, it could have been absolutely terrible for the NHL if the Golden Knights won because of that. And even if it doesn't directly result in a Golden Knights goal, it does directly result the flow of the game and how the game proceeds after that, a defensive zone draw or a center ice draw. So oh man, I don't know what else to say about it, to be honest.
I just maybe this is the new rule, Devin. No refs in the third period of the playoffs. Like, just don't have them on the ice because they're not going to call anything. Obviously, last night it was like basically. I think Dan Riccio tweeted. I almost retweeted what he said, but Dan Riccio said it was pretty clear that only murder will get a penalty. And I'm like, are we sure that murder is getting the penalty here in this playoffs? Are we absolutely certain about that? Because I am not convinced in any way, shape, or form.
Oh man, I could definitely see it being like if you guys haven't seen The Town, the movie The Town. There's a point in that movie where there's a lone cop and he looks over and sees the bank robbers and he's like, well, either I do something or I don't. He just looks away and the bank robbers go away. So it definitely could be like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, all that to say is certainly for the Canadians that you have to give them credit for getting this far. For doing this, because they persevered through a lot through these playoffs. Since they were down, sorry, I have to bring this up. Since they were down 3-1, I mean 11-2 in the playoffs. Since they were down 3-1, so
yep, they deserve everything that they're getting right now, which is a shot at the Stanley Cup. And if you told me that this was going to be the case. Going into the playoffs, I'm sure that no one would have this pegged to be a possibility other than potentially some just overly excited Montreal Canadiens fans.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, but they're so faithful, though. There were a lot of Canadian fans like, yeah, we can beat Vegas. And people are like, what? No. Are you? Yeah. But they did it. And so definitely deserve credit for that. We'll preview this, whoever they're playing on Sunday. We'll get to the Islanders in Tampa Bay in a moment, and if you have any comments, put them in the chat. We'll address them. But we also are going to be doing. We'll be setting out videos here, probably starting Monday, about doing some off-season plans for teams. So this will also be a clip. But we talk now. We have to look at the Vegas Golden Knights from their perspective. This is a team that has been to the Final Four 3 of their first 4 franchise years. I think that they're going to look back at the past 2 years, though, as missed opportunities. I think that they certainly would look back and feel like they should have beat the Dallas Stars, and they probably feel like they should have beat the Montreal Canadiens this year, but they didn't. And I think you look back also, I think there's no question, as Dan Russell tweeted out, no question that the turning point of this series was Marc-Andre Fleury's gaffe. That turned out, I think, to be a huge turning point, because then it became a Fleury-Leonard controversy, which I think was a distraction to the team. We'll get to the forwards, which is the sort of the big weakness right now with the Golden Knights, but the other thing that, like, there was one play, it was in the first period, that Nick Suzuki just did it's a set play where he's dumping the puck in, and Cole Caulfield, I mean, Alex Pietrangelo, like, if Cole Caulfield was a car and Alex Pietrangelo was a pedestrian, that would have been accurate, because Caulfield blew past him. Like, and Caulfield's, first of all, Caulfield's fast. That's one thing. But I don't think we've talked enough about how slow this Vegas Golden Knight defense was. Oh, I know they scored 8 of the goals here. But on the back end, they are slow.
They definitely are. I mean, you got an aging Pietrangelo, an aging Alec Martinez. Brady McNabb obviously got completely burned by Cole Caulfield on the Caulfield goal. Shea Theodore, he has some decent wheels. He's not an amazing skater as far as speed goes, but he can get around on the ice pretty damn well. Zach Whitecloud is a big body, and Nicholas Heggie. There we go.
Yeah.
He's a young guy. He's still trying to figure out where he is on the ice, and making sure he's in the proper positions, especially with the speed of those young players. And looking into the offseason, Kev, there's only one player that's coming off the books here. That's Alec Martinez. And if you decide to re-sign him, he's 33 years old, and he's still a very good defenseman. Don't get me wrong. But it just seems like they need some sort of spark there on the back end, along with within the forward group. I just don't know what they're going to do to solve that problem, because they only have just a hair over $6 million in cap space. If they just decide to stand pat, and which might be the only option that they do have, depending on whether or not they're going to be trying to trade off some players to different teams that might want a player off of the Vegas Golden Knights. I just don't see them doing anything, and I don't think that anybody will be wanting to do any favors for the Vegas Golden Knights, considering where they held the majority of the teams in their expansion draft when they came to the season 4 years ago. So it's very fascinating to see what moves are going to be made here.
Well, Sean, who's not on, but busy doing other things, but he asked this question: did Vegas miss Nate Schmidt?
I think so. I talk about just a leader in the locker room. Everybody loves him. A guy who could probably help the mental game for the Golden Knights, just for keeping things light. And he's a good second pairing defenseman, and he definitely could have mitigated some of the lack of foot speed on the back end. So yeah, I mean, you can definitely make the argument that they did miss Nate Schmidt.
I'm not going to disagree with that. Derek England was also a factor on that team as well. John Merrill was also on that team, by the way. Sorry, just was looking at something. Yeah, I definitely think they missed. They needed some more foot speed, and I do think Nate Schmidt was a loss there for sure. By the way, also Sean chimed in and said, more hockey sounds by Kevin, please. So I guess now I have to do more hockey sounds. Yeah.
Yeah, and to Kyle M's point on our comments as well. Yeah, the defense was definitely a bit of a question mark, even though they scored the majority of the goals within the series. But the lack of center depth is definitely apparent within that lineup, and none of it is to like the Stevenson. You have Chandler Stevenson, you have Erik Karlsson, Nick Roy, and Thomas Nosek, and I believe Nosek is up after. Yeah, they got to re-sign Thomas Nosek if he wants to return, but that's a fourth line center. It seems like the majority of these players down the middle are at best a second line center, and Nick Roy, he's still trying to figure out where he is in this league as well. And it's just, you're asking a lot of a Chandler Stevenson to be on that top line with Pacioretty and Stone. You think that you look back at that trade with Pacioretty, if you don't really remember, there's a lot of controversy with Pacioretty in Montreal, and that he didn't want to be there anymore. And if you really take yourself back to that time, it made sense for the Vegas Golden Knights, who needed scoring, who needed kind of a bit more depth within that lineup to make a difference. And right now, it does not look like a good trade.
Yeah,
they could definitely need a Nick Suzuki spark in that team.
I'm not going to disagree with you. I don't personally think that the Vegas Golden Knights can say that they came away as winners, clear winners in this trade, for sure. So let's just toss the other thing that with Vegas before I toss the big question here. I think it's a mystery to me why they didn't play Ryan Reeves more.
Yeah, it baffles me too. Maybe Pete DeBoer isn't a big fan of Ryan Reeves, and maybe it's not really that type of player isn't really part of his strategy in within his how he feels comfortable deploying his lineup there, and that might have been something that needs to be talked about here. Is you might need a Ryan Reeves within the playoffs, and those are the type of players that you kind of look for to have a spark within your lineup, to make a big hit, to potentially fight someone. I guess the only people that I could really think that he could potentially fight would be a Shea Weber, a Ben Sherratt, or maybe even a Joel Edmondson. Outside of that, it's not really too many people around the league or players around the league that are able to line up against Ryan Reeves. So it definitely is questionable why he wasn't on the ice more, or at all for that matter.
Well, even it's not even about the fight, but just you look at that four defense for the Canadiens, like Weber, Sherratt, Edmondson, Petrie. You needed to wear them down, and they could not do it with the lineup they had. They just couldn't do it. So I don't see why you couldn't have Ryan Reeves play some sort of role in wearing down the Canadiens' defense, but they just refused to do it. So
maybe there's too much respect with Carey Price being a good puck mover, because if you don't strategically put it into the corner as you're dumping it in, if it goes behind the net, Carey Price is going to come out and play it. And there was one point last night that he got taken out by Ben Sherratt, and there's a good possibility that Vegas was able to capitalize on that. But and both Sherratt and Price went behind the net, but that wasn't about Price playing the puck per se. It's just maybe they played the percentages on that they don't need that type of player in the lineup, especially with all the statistics and the analytical stats that are out there. I don't think that there has to be a balance between two of them. And I'm not saying that Vegas is very analytically driven. I don't know that, but it just knowing where the trend of where the NHL is going, that they are looking at analytics a lot more. Yeah.
Certainly certainly is a discussion for sure. So let's get to what a lot of people were tweeting out after the bold prediction. Is Jack Eichel Vegas bound?
No. As much if Jack Eichel is Vegas bound, you're selling off your farm. They're not looking for. If you are Buffalo, you're not looking to win now. As much as you, as a fan, want to see the success, and you've gone through a few rebuilds within the past 2 decades here, it doesn't make sense for me, if I was a GM of Buffalo, to make that trade. I just don't see Vegas having the pieces to make that happen. And even their top end players, like if you look up and down the lineup, it looks like the average age is around 29 to 30. That's not within the window of Buffalo. So whoever's thinking that, maybe a bit clickbaity, but I just don't think that they have the pieces.
The one poll of Sean Warren from the Area to 51 podcast threw out Cody Glass, Peyton Krebs, and a 2021 first round pick. And if I don't think that makes a lot of sense, even for Vegas to do, quite frankly. I mean, I would be loath. I don't know. I still think Cody Glass. I know Cam Robinson says he's been ineffective, but I'm not sure I'm willing to give up Peyton Krebs in a trade yet. That's me. I think there's a lot with him that I think that he's the type of guy I think you win with. But so if I'm Buffalo, I'm certainly interested in. And again with Eichel, this is the problem: is as much as people are like, this injury is no big deal, I still want to hear about this injury. I want to know about this Jack Eichel injury and what exactly is going on before I get what I'm giving up, what I believe will be a significant amount. So,
yeah, That's a good point. And okay, let's go down that road. Let's go down the road. Okay, Vegas can make it work. Which is a big if, because they're like I said, they have $6 million in cap space going into this offseason. So they need to offload some contracts to make that work. And okay, so you have Jack Eichel, who is 23, I believe. Either way, he's in his early 20s, 23, 22. And he is a really, really good player that could make 24. A difference in the 24 within that lineup. And he's entering his prime, if not in it already. And so then let's go down the road of a few years. Where are you within that organization as far as, okay, you sell off the farm, a first round pick, a Peyton Krebs, and a Cody Glass. It just doesn't make much sense. You're putting all your eggs in one basket, and it could take a long time to get the pieces after this window of the Vegas Golden Knights is over. Then what? You're going to have another Buffalo situation where, okay, it's time to rebuild and trying to retool, if you will. But it just, I don't know. Yeah, banners fly forever, but I feel like it's a big gamble for a team that, Kev, you've said it before, doesn't have that killer instinct. And does Jack Eichel push you over the edge for that killer instinct? Maybe, but I'd say that the percentages don't make sense.
I have to be honest. I haven't seen it.
No,
I have to be honest. I have not seen. I was thinking about this last night. I'm like, if Jack Eichel was in this series as a result different? I don't know that. I don't. We haven't seen him in the playoffs, right? So it's hard to say. And Sean again here says, and I'll get to Kyle's comment in a second because that's yes, it has to include any Eichel trade has to include it, and that. Can I say my hot take?
Please do it.
I got a spicy take. I would rather have at this point Shane Wright over Jack Eichel.
Oh man,
it's
a hot take, and for a reason. I mean, we have no idea what Shane Wright's going to be at the NHL level. He's a highly touted prospect. He's not this year, but next year's draft, right?
He's the 2022 draft.
Yeah. So it's a big gamble. It really is. Jack Eichel was one of those players with a year or two before his draft was very, very highly touted, along with Connor McDavid. And Connor McDavid stole the show, and obviously has proven to be a better player overall as of right now. But man, I love those takes, though. I really do. It's abnormal. And you could be right. You really could be. And I just don't want to get Jack Eichel. He's a really good player. He is really good. And I think that if he's on in a better situation on a better team, he would be better. He's a guy who wants to win. He's cocky as fuck. And he walks around and skates with a bit of swagger. And I have a lot of respect for that. I just think that it's just he has the Buffalo effect, and look at the players that have come out of Buffalo who have thrived. It's crazy. Ryan O'Reilly, and he won a cup after that. So I don't know. It's really hard to say what type of player he would be with surrounded by better players. No offense to Sam Reinhart or Victor Olofsson, but man, you got to think that if he does get traded to Vegas, that he would make a difference. It's just how much of a difference would that be? Is that enough to make Vegas blow over Montreal or win that Game 7? Who knows?
And but this is where I'm going with that is like it is giving. I think any trade from me, if I'm Buffalo, I'm asking for a 22 or 23 first round pick. And ultimately that's the decision that I have to make. Would I rather have the shot at taking a Shane Wright, who has won pretty much everywhere that he has played? So we do know that part, that is part of his history, that is part of his DNA. Or would I have the guy right now that is absolutely talented, but you're going to have to give up the farm for a guy that's unsure in terms of unsure in terms of injury. That's right now. That's what I'm thinking about. And you even look at, there's in 2023, you got Connor Bedard and Matke Michkov. You've got Brad Lambert in this 2022. There's just some interesting pieces here that that's where I'm hesitant with the Jack Eichel trade overall. And that's why I'm more like, I would take the chance at going after Sam Reinhart. But I do agree with Kyle, and I was going to bring this up anyway. If there's a way for Vegas to do it, I do think RNH would be a good fit in Vegas. He is probably the type of guy that he's versatile. He plays center in the wing. He's great at faceoffs. I think he's the type of guy that I think Vegas, that is the type of center I think Vegas should be looking a little bit more at and I think that if I'm Vegas, I agree with Kyle. I think that they should look at Ryan Nugent-Hopkins.
And if I was Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, I'd be looking elsewhere. Just along the lines of what it's a whole McDavid talk. Like what's in Edmonton for you? If McDavid's not there, what other players do you have there other than Draisaitl? And I don't want to besmirch Draisaitl or anything, or McDavid for that matter. But outside of those two, there's not really much anything there for Nugent-Hopkins other than loyalty that this is the team that drafted him. So if I was Nugent-Hopkins, I think Vegas is an attractive spot as far as lifestyle and the amount of responsibility he would have on that team. I think it would be more than he would in Edmonton, because you don't have those major heavy hitters as far as McDavid and Draisaitl go. So I think that's a great spot for Vegas and for Hopkins.
Yeah. And yes, the other big question with Vegas really at this point is you're not in the expansion draft, so that's one thing. But Fleury, you're not. I don't think you come back this year with Fleury or Leonard. Who do you bring back?
Well, they have to bring, or Fleury does have 1 year left at $7 million. Leonard has 4 years left at $5 million. So are you saying you're looking for a trade?
Well, 36 years old at $7 million in a cap crunch after what happened is very tough to bring back. And I think what Marc-Andre Fleury did in Vegas is phenomenal, but that's.
He's a Vezina candidate. Say, for instance, if you are wanting to bring in a big name player like a Jack Eichel, you could try and retain some salary of a Fleury to make those things work, and that could be potentially good for the organization. But then you're relying on Lehner and insert goalie here. There's a lot of. I guess you could bring in a 1B that for very minimal price, but even if you did find somebody to take it, you would have to retain salary on Fleury, and I just don't think there's a team out there that would want a Fleury potentially, which is so weird to say, just because he is a Vezina candidate and he could potentially win. That's what makes this so fascinating. Is I don't know. There's so many potential options, but if it was me, I would bring him back. I would, and just because he was good, and he could be your 1B, and you could ride Leonard a little bit more than he did this year, depending on his health, because he did have concussion issues. So I don't know. Wait,
I'll throw a scenario here, Devin. What about the Leafs?
I don't think that Anderson's going to be back, so it could be a good possibility there for sure. It once again depends on whether or not they're going to be retaining salary. I'm just going to pull up the Maple Leafs cap situation. So they have $11 million in projected cap space, and you still have to sign Hyman, which would be a potential. Either that you sign a Hyman or a Foligno. Let's put it that way. Probably around ideally $4 million, but then you have $7 million after that. You definitely could. But who does Vegas take? Do they take a Travis Dermott, which I was listening to Elliot Friedman this morning, and he made a good point that Ron Francis, he if you look at how he built Carolina, it's all on the back end. So I truly believe that they'll probably take a Travis Dermott over a Alexander Kerfoot, because his name's been popping up for the expansion draft. I wouldn't mind seeing Fleury in Toronto at all, because then you could have a tandem of Fleury and Campbell. But once again, it's hard to say that they can make the money work.
I bring that up because it's a 1 year option.
Yep.
And you have something with Jack Campbell. It might be a fit. For the goalie prospects in Vegas, by the way, just if anybody is interested, according to Sinbid Vegas, Logan Thompson, Isaiah Savell, there's Yuri Patera, Dylan Ferguson, and Jesper Vikman are in the top 5. So that would be what their prospect pool is if they don't bring in someone other than what they have. If they decide.
They also have Oscar Dansk as well, and I'm sure people have heard that name because when they had the goalie carousel of 2 years ago, he was a part of that.
Yeah. Sean asked who's trading for Fleury. Did we answer that? I agree with Sean.
Yeah.
It's tough. I just think it's tough to bring them back, but we'll see.
Well, to your point that it's only 1 year. It's only 1 year, and if you can offload that contract or even eat a small portion of that and bring in somebody else to help you either on that back end to replace Alec Martinez, or most likely down the middle, as Kyle M had said earlier in the comments, that it was more the center depth that was the detriment of Vegas. Then I could see that definitely be a possibility, especially if you do eat a bit of that salary. So, but once again, it's only for 1 year, and I think that it's more of a potential that he will be back as a Vegas Golden Knight than it is for him to be traded.
Fair. My spicy take is I know that already people have them winning the Pacific Division next year. Not quite convinced yet. That's all I'll say. It's way too early for that.
They're a good regular season team. They really are. It's just when they come to the playoffs, it just doesn't seem like it's there. So I don't know about winning, but they're going to be a top 1, 2, or 3. I think they're pretty much a shoo-in for the playoffs.
Probably. I would agree with. I think that they are definitely a playoff team, whether they are the regular season champions or not. That will be interesting. One more team for Fleury. Let me just toss out. It's they will have the cap room. What about the Oilers?
Yeah, man, that's not a bad spot either. I know that they are. Man, yeah, that is a good spot potentially for Fleury to go. It's what are you? Is it a sign and trade of Nugent Hopkins? Probably not. Just who would be going the other way would be my question within that. That would be beneficial for Vegas to do that. Maybe it's Puljujärvi, considering depending on where he's at with the organization, or is it a couple draft picks? Who knows?
Yeah, I just tossed that out. I mean, I don't know that in terms of cap room, there is a fit. In terms of trade, I don't know if it's a complete fit, but that's the name. Popped in my head was Philadelphia, and I'm just going to check to see if they have the cap room as well. With Carter Hart, it depends where you're at with Carter.
I mean, it could be a good tandem because I think they relied on Carter Hart too much this year, and there might be too much pressure on him. So yeah, they have no goalies signed right now. Elliott, Hart, and Leuner are either UFAs or Carter Hart's an RFA, and they have about 13 mil in cap space. So maybe not, but I just think that if you're going to try and help Carter Hart move forward in his development, that having a Marc-Andre Fleury, who is very well known to be a good teammate, could potentially help him push him over the edge to be that goaltender. Yeah,
maybe another place too is down the Pennsylvania state, and maybe he goes back to Pittsburgh for one more run.
Oh, man, could you imagine? I don't know where he's at with his the relationship there, because it did seem a bit sour when he left.
Fair, but maybe, who knows? But certainly Vegas is going to be interesting for sure in terms of where they are at. Will be a fascinating offseason in Vegas, even though they're not part of the expansion draft. They've got some decisions to make for sure. Let's move on here. It is Game 7 tonight. The New York Islanders and the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Islanders were down 2-0 heading into the third period and pulled that one out in overtime with a very late goal and a hell of a shot from Stephen Mayfield. By the way, that might be one of the goals of the playoffs.
Yep.
Coming back from 2-0, and giving that opportunity for one more barn, and the beer being thrown on the ice, and all just the whole old school. This is intriguing. I will make a bold prediction. This will be my bold prediction. This game goes to overtime.
I agree.
This one will go to overtime. It will be low scoring.
Another 2-1, 3-2 game.
Yeah.
At the end of it.
Yeah. I'm only sticking with Tampa only because I picked Tampa to win. But I got to tell you, the Islanders have to have the momentum going into this. You come back from 2-0, you win this game in overtime. You got plastered 8. The Lightning scored 10 straight goals on you before you came back into this and won. That 8-0 game is pretty much is evaporated.
Yep. But it doesn't mean they can't do it. It doesn't mean that Tampa can't go off and go nuts on Varlamov and then possibly Sorokin. If we're going to be talking about goaltenders, that Vasilevsky, as much as I want the Islanders to win, if Vasilevsky plays a game of his life, which he's known to do, to shut the door, I would say that Tampa does have the edge within the goaltending, because he has proven that he's been able to do that in the past. So it's really hard to say who will possibly come out on top. I hope it's the Islanders, and I really want to believe that they can do it, because I obviously they can. They've done it, but closing out a series, oh man, it's going to be hard, especially on the road, not getting the matchups that you want. Even though I don't really think Bertrotz is a matchup guy per se, just because of the amount of depth within that forward lineup, and even on defense, you can rely on the Scott Mayfields of the world over there, the Pelech, Pulak, and Andy
Leddy.
Green as well. And Leddy, yeah. Always forget about Leddy, man. Talk about sneaky good. When he signed in that offseason, that offseason of Troy Brouwer and Louis Eriksson, oh man, that was the same free agency, right?
I think you were referring to Andrew Ladd, but so that's not the same.
No. Maybe. Yeah, no, I think you're right. Either way, he's not talked that much or talked about that much, Nick Leddy. So I think that within that, it's a toss-up for me. It really is. I want to say that New York can do it, and I think they can. But Tampa Bay is just Tampa Bay, and anything could really happen.
Leddy has been with the Islanders since 2015. So that was before all that signing. Yeah, you're thinking of Andrew Ladd.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I and also the other thing at this point is Nikita Kucherov. At this point, no word if he's back or not. He did not participate in the optional morning skate this morning.
Not surprising there.
So I think that will be a mystery. If he's not playing, I do think that is a significant loss. Obviously, a significant loss for Tampa Bay. I know that everybody is going to talk about. There's no longer top 20 scorer remaining in these playoffs yet, but Nikita Kucherov would have been a top 20 scorer. So I just kind of want to point that out. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a fun game. And we'll see who the Montreal Canadiens are playing because and the type of style that it is, it's
what's the better matchup for Montreal? Who is it, Tampa or is it the Islanders?
Honestly, I think Tampa's a better matchup for them. I know that they have the skill, but I just think that the Islanders. I think the Islanders and Montreal play a very similar style, which I think makes this even in a lot of ways. I don't know if Tampa. I think Montreal. Yeah, I think Tampa's. This is the thing. I think I love Vasilevsky is a great goaltender. Don't get me wrong, but I would trust Price over Vasilevsky, where I trust the Islanders to keep a thing low scoring and find a way to bang in a goal and do something to get themselves on the board. So that's why I feel like Tampa Bay is a better matchup for them.
Fair. And this is where I'm split again. There's pros and cons to each, and I feel like Montreal and New York are very similar styled teams. Bear Trotz is he's a bit more defensive than Ducharme or Richardson, but as far as their strategies go, I think I'd rather, for entertainment, I would rather see. This is just the hockey nerd in me. I'd rather see New York just because of seeing how they counteract each other because they are so similar. But at the same time, Tampa Bay is just so exciting. They have those top names of Stamkos, Braden Point, Victor Hedman, Sergachev, and I think that that would definitely be a storyline within this as well as Sergachev playing the team that drafted him. Maybe there's a bit of a chip on his shoulder for that too. So that storyline is going to be kind of fun if that does happen. Yeah,
that's one trade that the Canadians did not win. Duran for Sergachev. That's one they didn't win.
No, not at all.
That'll be fascinating. We will preview that on Sunday. Who it ends up being. Maybe we'll put that out as a poll question a little later. Who's a better matchup for the Canadians, the Islanders or Tampa Bay? Because I certainly, and if it's the Islanders too, those two crowds.
Oh man, and you got to expect that the Canadian government is going to be, or the Quebec government is going to be able to allow more fans in the stands, especially look at that crowd outside last night.
Yeah, come on, eh? Like if they're all allowed to wander around St. Catherine Street and down around that area, and I've been around that area, why aren't they allowed in the stands? Like, what's the difference?
Wall, shoulder to shoulder, wall to wall, people within that square. It makes zero sense why. Yes, okay, you're have the fresh air of being outside, but man, I think you really do need to at least get at least half capacity in there, at least. Yeah, I think they'll try for 5. I don't know if they'll get half. What is half? Is it 16 full or 17? I want to say it's 19. Full center capacity. It is 21. Half would be around 10. I don't see it. Yeah, I would realistically, and hopefully I could see 75. But yeah, as far as you're probably right with 5.
The other big story that happened yesterday that just, this happened. It was actually about 24 hours ago that the Seattle Kraken had their press conference at Puget Sound. And lo and behold, Toronto Maple Leaf assistant Dave Haskol, in the best kept secret in National Hockey League history, is named the first coach in Seattle Kraken history. Nobody saw this coming, although a couple people knew that Haskell was allowed to speak to other teams. Nobody had this on their radar. Everybody was on the Rick Tocchet train. We'll talk about the Tocchet in a second, but what are the Leafs losing and what are the Kraken gaining?
He was in charge of the defense in Toronto, and I think when you really look at it and you look at where Seattle is coming from, as far as, okay, once again you have Ron Francis, the GM out there, and he, like I said before, he look at how he's made that Carolina organization. It's all through defense. And so it's going to be a defensively run team. It's not going to be a team that's going to be very competitive out of it. And it probably won't be that exciting hockey, but I think overall, they're making the right moves to be successful, long-term success instead of short-term success, which it seems like Vegas is potentially going to have or trying. Hello, am I good?
You're good now. Yeah. Now you froze. There we are. I think you're there. You're there. You're there.
You keep going.
Go ahead.
Just to close off my point, it is a loss for Toronto to not have him on the back end coaching there. So I think overall it is a good move, and it could be a potential big win for Seattle.
To me, what this indicated to me from the Kraken's perspective is that they are looking a little bit more long term and building this team a little bit long term. Again, I'm just going to play back to the 2022. It's my own vice, Devin. It's my vice. The 2022 and 2023 draft, and I think they're building around those two drafts, which is smart. And you're getting a guy, a bit of a teacher. Even if you're projecting what you're getting as the second pick, it's quite likely, I think, they are going to pick a defenseman. My prediction is that it's if I say defense or forward, I predict that they will take a defenseman. But so that that's certainly going to start there. You're probably in the lottery for 22. You're probably in the lottery for 23, and so you can build around that a little bit and start building this team from the ground up. I don't think that there's any pressure in Seattle for them to start competing right away anyway. So I think the fans will come. I think that there's a honeymoon, and they'll build that identity very slowly. But
Well, and I think you have I think Seattle knows is a bigger hockey market than people would think, and I think they have a bit more knowledge in comparison to Vegas, where Vegas, in order for it to work there, it needs to be exciting. It needs to be they needed to have that quick start into doing well. And I'm not saying that they predicted that they would be going to the Stanley Cup Finals in their first year, and once they saw that potential, that's when, get the ball rolling a bit more. Yeah, I think you are right that they will go the slower route and that they will pick a defenseman. Like I said, Ronnie, he is known for his love for the defensive side of drafting, and they have an amazing prospect list, and over there in Carolina, and that's because of him.
Yeah, I think he deserves a lot of credit for that for sure. Absolutely. Now, the other thing in Seattle that is some are suggesting is there is a possibility that they may hire, it's not confirmed, but they may be hiring a female assistant, which bravo to them. They've shown the most progressiveness in terms of bringing in and doing those kind of things. So that there's some predicting that as well, and that wouldn't surprise me. I'm not saying I have a name or anything like that, but that wouldn't surprise me either.
Yeah, I've heard whispers of that too, and hiring the first, as far as I know, the first color commentator for the radio in JT Brown.
The first colored play-by-play radio guy, which was not JT Brown. I'll get his name in a second. It starts with an E, but JT Brown is, I believe, the first regional hockey analyst play-by-color commentator.
That's what I was talking about. Yes.
Yeah, but their radio play-by-play is also color,
right,
as well. So, and it's Emerson. Let me get his name. Sorry, we're terrible at our research so far today.
Not the best. But okay, so sorry, I just want to go back to who
Everett Fitzhugh is his name.
Man, that name just way over my head. But that's awesome. Oh, I was just kind of curious if we are going to the draft, and you think that Seattle is going to take a defenseman, who would they take? I mean, obviously, if Owen Power, if he's still available at 2, then they'll run up and make that selection. But if it's not, then who do you think is going to be? It's going to be Luke Hughes, Simon Edvidson, Brant Clark. Who do you think that they would go for?
I think it will probably be Brant Clark. I think that from some scouts, I think that Simon Edvidson, I think big, huge guy, but maybe not quite where Brant Clark is. Luke Hughes is pretty high up there as well. I think that from where I'm kind of thinking of where everybody's kind of has everybody pegged, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they have Brant Clark. He's played in Europe. He's played with men. He's got some versatility. I think overall, I think that a lot of people see his game as more well-rounded than anyone else. So I would think that if they're going anywhere, I would pick Brant. I would think that they're going to go with Brant Clark.
Well, he's a right-handed shot defenseman as well. And which is hard to find within the NHL. And if where he's projected to be, I wouldn't be surprised if they took him. Obviously, barring the fact that Buffalo doesn't take Owen Power.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm kind of thinking that Buffalo is going to take Owen Power. I don't think that him going back to Michigan for them matters at all. No. Especially next year. So, I'm kind of thinking it will be Brant Clark. I'm projecting, in my opinion, and it's only my opinion, I think the first 4 picks are defensemen.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. So those guys that I talked about, so Edvinson, Hughes, Clark, and Power.
Yeah. Yeah. Now Edvinson could drop because that depends on what everybody. It's all a crapshoot, but I'm 52% certain that the first 4 picks are defensemen.
Usually it's 51%, but I like the 52%.
52%.
Yeah. Well, we'll have a draft preview here once the playoffs are done, and we'll have a expansion draft preview as well of what we'll be looking at. So you guys will be able to, look forward to that from us at the Hockey Podcast.
Yes. Like, subscribe, share. Sean says, Kevin will be wrong with that blazing hot take, but I love the take. I don't know which take he's referring to that's blazing hot.
Probably the defense. That is all going to be for defense. Top 4 picks are going to be defensemen. Yeah.
I'm not the only one projecting that. So to be fair, Lucas Gates, I think Habs can take it against either Tampa or New York. We will talk about that on Sunday. We will find out who's winning, and then we will predict. And Vegas just wondering what went wrong. I want to get to the Rick Tocchet part of this Kraken conversation because there are some reports that Rick Tocchet could be joining the Calgary Flames as an assistant. What are your? I think one of the things that was interesting that Ron Francis said, this is the other thing with the Kraken, just quickly before we move on, is there certainly seems to be a Lou Lamoriello quality to how they're going to be handling things, in that they're not going to the. That was one of the things that Francis said is Haskol was on their radar all along, and Haskol just didn't say anything. He was in the Toronto media market, Devin, and he kept it quiet. So they definitely do not want to be one of those teams that everyone is paying attention to necessarily. And maybe Tocchet was a bit too verbal. I don't know.
Maybe. Once again, look at the GM there. He keeps stuff tight to his chest. But I mean, Tocchet, he could join the coaching staff. I don't know where he would fit in, considering they have Cale McLean that just got hired, got promoted, and then you got Kirk Muller that just got hired. What was it, 2 weeks ago? So I'd be kind of curious on where he would sit within that coaching staff. I just don't see it happening, but who knows? I'm not saying he wouldn't be a good addition, because he definitely would.
I think he would be a great. I think in a lot of ways he'd be a great addition. Another Stanley Cup winner behind the bench. Won in 1992 with the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think he's got the respect. I think he brings in a bit of toughness, and will. So I wouldn't mind that. And I think again, we talked about this before. I think some extra outside eyes, I think, from this organization would help. I think he brings in. I think the other thing is back to that entitlement again. Rick Tocchet would certainly stamp the hell out of that. And he was in the the dumpster fire that was Buffalo. Let's not forget the dumpster fire that was Arizona. That organization has been for the last few years. So wouldn't be surprised. We'll see about that. I could also see Toronto being interested in Rick Tocchet as well.
To me, that would make more sense, considering
I actually could see that. Actually, I agree with you. I could see Tocchet more in Toronto than Calgary. But
also considering that they just lost Haskol to Seattle, so that there is a job opening there in consideration to Calgary. It looks like their coaching staff is filled out.
Yeah, I think they are looking for one more person, though.
Yeah. Just curious on what he would be asking for a salary in a world that we've been talking about forever, that in a flat cap where owners don't really want to pay more than they have to, unless they think that it's going to be very beneficial, which Tocchet could be very beneficial towards Calgary. But just on that standpoint, I don't know.
Well, I think the other thing with Tocchet too, he's not going to get an associate coach role because that's been made for Kirk Muller.
Mm-hmm.
I would think if I'm Tocchet, just let me just spitball this for Tocchet just for a second here. If I'm Tocchet, I want to be in a position where I could potentially be someone that can take over the organization eventually, if it's a developmental thing. Toronto doesn't give you that because you're going to stick with, I would think, Sheldon Keefe for some time. It's
so you're thinking that after Sutter, it would be Tocchet.
Well, I think the plan is Kirk Muller.
Or are you talking about more the GM? Oh, Kirk Muller. Oh, you're talking about Kirk Muller. Okay.
Yeah. So Lucas brings up here. If Tocchet's going to Calgary, that means Sutter's back for Sutter's staying for. He's got 2 more years in the contract. So But usually what happened in LA is Stevens became associate coach and then head coach. I think that would be the plan in Calgary. Is Muller is doing that, but maybe with Rick Tocchet landing on their laps, maybe. But if I'm Rick Tocchet, I want to at least put myself in a position to be a head coach sooner rather than later. Maybe Pittsburgh.
Maybe with Berkey there.
I mean, maybe he's part of that Sullivan staff. Yeah.
Definitely, and especially if you are Berkey, you might be looking for as good as Sullivan has been for that organization, winning a cup when he took over last time that they won. It could be a bit of a safeguard for next year if things don't go the right way.
Yeah. Lucas brings up, I'm surprised Arizona isn't being discussed about relocations as the team is getting booted to the Central Division. I'm surprised to talk about Houston hasn't been brought up. Arizona, that relocation, that's...
Batman doesn't want that to happen.
He doesn't want it.
He's very steadfast on that and does not. He's been very vocal that Arizona is a market that they do want to keep in the NHL. I'd be ridiculously surprised if it doesn't work out there, even though the dumpster fire that is Arizona. As far as ownership goes, as far as their talks with moving arenas as well, and just in general of the talks of the organization and not treating their players properly. So it something does need to change, but I don't know if it's going to be going to Houston. As long as Bettman's been, or as long as Bettman is involved with the NHL, that's not going to happen, I don't think.
Yeah. There's still, I mean, that area around Glendale, which near the Arizona Cardinals stadium, it's being developed. They still believe that there's something there. But yeah, Bettman doesn't want to move that team. He really doesn't. They've had a number of opportunities. They're not moving, unfortunately. So that's, Sean says my hot take is first 4 picks being Demon. I mean, this whole thing is a crapshoot. So I don't think I'm offside, but I could be wrong. I've been wrong before.
We all have.
Anything else we need to bring up?
I don't think so. No.
We will. We will be back on Sunday. We'll talk about because I always like to bring Tyler in on these conversations, but Mark Messier is joining the ESPN as a studio analyst. We'll talk about that with Tyler as well. We'll preview who is going to who the Canadians are playing. Is it the Islanders or Lightning? We'll get back into the Sedins a little bit as well. We'll just get Tyler's take on that and whatever else has come up here, because we still have some awards to give out. The Norris and the Hart have not been awarded yet. We know who the Hart Trophy winner is, but we'll talk about that and whatever else happens. How do we follow you?
At GordHouse09 on Twitter.
Sean is BeardyCanuck03. Tyler, TNOBLE. Chris is Schneid's, SCHNEIDZ. I am KEVOLE. Podcast_hockey. Facebook.com, The Hockey Podcast. YouTube.com, The Hockey Podcast. Subscribe to the audio shortly after. Thanks, everyone. Great conversation. Thanks for everyone for chiming in and watching and listening, and we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.